Hello and welcome to Talk to the Paw, a podcast that celebrates dogs for simply being wagtastic. I'm Caroline Bartley, and with the help of canine nerd Scott Andrews, we'll consider how and why these fabulous animals make such a huge contribution to our lives. We're already halfway through the first season of the Dogcast, and we've been amazed and delighted at how it's been embraced. Thanks so much to our listeners right around the world, including glorious and far-flung locations like Vanuatu, Egypt, Sri Lanka, and New South Wales in Australia. It's a joy to have you all on board with us. Autumn has well and truly arrived here in the Northern Hemisphere, so grab your favourite snuggly blanket, settle down and unwrap the bow on the box of delights that is Episode 5. It's time for the Twilight Bark. Time to see what news story has caught our eye this time round, and the Metro has an interesting report on the financial implications of owning a dog. The article cites research undertaken by Net Voucher Codes, which has looked at 42 of the UK's most popular dog breeds, and the findings may have you clutching fearfully at your wallet. It reports the average yearly cost of food and treats is just over £350. For grooming, it's around £280, and pet insurance will set you back just over £110. All of this, of course, is breed dependent, with owners of St Bernards expected to pay as much as £17,500 over the course of a dog's lifetime. Scott, I think some people might find these figures quite alarming, but do they surprise you?
No, not really. If you listen to the episode where we were talking about coronavirus, we actually looked at a Dogs Trust report that mentioned an astronomical inflation in the costs of dogs. Pre-lockdown, the price of a puppy was about £1,000 on average. After lockdown, it's gone up by about 155%. So now you'd be looking at paying almost £2,500.
The article had mentioned specific breeds and associated costs for those breeds. But on a more general tone, is there any figure cited for the average lifetime cost of owning a dog?
Yes. So they give the figure of £11,162.11 for a lifetime of an average dog. Mm-hmm. But the question you've really got to think about is, what makes an average dog?
That's almost like saying what makes an average human.
Bear in mind that the criteria for this study, they looked at 42 breeds.
Yeah.
Now, we're talking breeds, pedigree breeds. We're not talking mongrels, mutts, and the Heinz variety that make our lives so much better.
Yeah, to be fair, which is probably the kind of dogs that most of us have. Well, certainly mine is a little mongrel. Yeah.
In the case of mongrels, the price would be different. If you actually look at, take for instance the standard poodle, the estimated cost for a lifetime is £18,500.
Okay, clutching my wallet.
Yeah, one of the things that PETA highlighted regarding this report is that there are a number of pedigree breeds that have common medical issues associated with them. So in the poodle's case, it would be progressive vision loss, seizures, diabetes, and a collapsing trachea.
Oh.
I suppose my point is that not every poodle is going to experience that in their lifetime. There are going to be plenty of poodles that are healthy.
Yeah.
In my opinion, at least, this study is very much looking at the worst case scenarios.
Do you think that people think about the financial implications of actually owning a dog before someone gets a dog? Is that something that they should take into account?
Absolutely. Right now, puppy prices have gone through the roof. As we mentioned before, due to COVID and the lockdown, there are a number of puppies being returned to dog shelters as it stands, and they're not very much older. Obviously, you've got assorted anxiety issues to deal with. The fact is, if you was to take a puppy from the Dogs Trust, for example, you would pay £150, and that would be it. Now, as we're talking about average lifetime costs, if you buy a puppy, the average lifespan for a dog is about 12 years.
Yeah.
Whereas if you rescue a 6, 7, 8-year-old dog, you can cut that price in half.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Granted, okay, the insurance cost may be different. The average yearly cost, according to this report, for pet insurance is £111.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
My own dog, who has had my Scottish Terrier, he has a chronic illness with no cure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've probably spent close on £8,000 to £9,000 in his lifetime on vet's bills alone.
Yeah, I think most people, sorry to interrupt, but find not that astronomical, actually.
Exactly. And there aren't many insurers in the world who are going to offer me £110 a year.
That's true, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, you've got that to consider. One of the things that struck me as odd was the average cost of grooming they gave was £278. Personally, with my own dog, I am paying £160 a year.
Well, obviously it depends what you're getting done. It depends on the breed of the dog, how they have to have their coat done. It also depends on the size of the dog.
There's another example of if you are looking to get a dog, if you're looking to rescue a dog, and you're trying to keep your costs down, you have to take a good look at the fur. Take, for example, a Boston Terrier. They don't have hair, they don't need cutting, they don't need grooming, they don't need a blow dry. In some respects, there are certain breeds of dog that you wouldn't have that cost. Another price that struck me was the average cost of food and treats. £350.
Which to me seems quite cheap, actually.
Well, fact is, when I train with my own dog, I often use cheese, cooked chicken, little bits of sausage. There are a lot of things that I use that, comparatively to going to a pet shop and paying £2 or £3 for a bag of 28 treats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
It's another way in which you can make a saving. And finally, they estimate the yearly cost of toys and equipment, £77?
Again, I think that's quite cheap.
Really? To me, that sounds like you're buying your dog an iPhone.
Well, maybe this survey is saying too much about me. Maybe I should just quit talking now.
But look, in all honesty, I do have at least 2 boxes of toys that my dogs have no interest in whatsoever.
Yeah.
Certain dogs prefer to play in certain ways.
Yeah.
And if you can identify that quickly, that will save you a lot of money. For instance, Labradors, they're the greatest connoisseurs of fetch, as we were talking about in the last episode. Mm-hmm. What more do you need for a Labrador than a ball to chase?
I had this experience myself when my boy was younger. You buy them expensive toys and then they end up playing with a box.
To be fair, with one of our dogs last Christmas, she had more joy opening her Christmas presents on Christmas Eve just because of the paper. Now, she wasn't interested in what was inside of it, but the paper was shredded all over the hallway.
That's right. It was knocking over the Christmas tree, I remember you saying, and then picking out her present and opening it.
She had a proper Merry Christmas. There are ways in which you can save money.
But if you want a pedigree dog, and perhaps your financial circumstances are such that you can't afford to pay tens of thousands of pounds a year in looking after the dog, are there any more amenable options that you can use, that you can take advantage of?
Certainly within breeds, often smaller dogs do cost less. Within the study, they come up with the 5 cheapest dogs. It's the Patterdale, the Jack Russell, the Staffordshire Terrier, so Staffies, who honestly you can find in abundance in dog shelters. Whippets and Boston Terriers. Each of these dogs cost on average somewhere between £7,000 and £8,000 in their lifetime, which is considerably less. When you're looking at the other end of the scale, they're ranging from £14,000 to £18,000.
Yeah.
Standard poodles being the top, St Bernards, Chow Chows. And much to our surprise, we were talking last episode about Labradoodles.
Oh, yes, of course.
And they're within the range of the most expensive dogs.
Yes,
There is a great difference. That's about a £10,000 difference in itself.
Mm-hmm. And who doesn't love a Jack Russell? I had a Jack Russell when I was growing up, and he was a little tiny white and tan thing and just a bundle of energy. And I found really good around, I was about 7 or 8 at the time, so really good with kids. But Jack Russell's always a great option.
One of the biggest mistakes prospective dog owners make is that we buy the dog for the lifestyle we want. We don't buy the dog for the lifestyle that we have. Mm-hmm.
Just to finish off, Scott, anything else that you have taken from the survey?
First and foremost, if you are looking to get a discount dog, so to speak, your best path of action, don't buy a puppy, look to adopt. If you're adopting, you're looking in most places, I mentioned the figure from the Dogs Trust, £150 to take the dog home. Mm-hmm. So that's your first saving. Mm-hmm. Between that and a puppy and a puppy post-lockdown, that's a saving of £2,500, which, is considerable. The second thing to consider, older dogs.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, depending on your lifestyle, depending if you've got kids, an older dog may not be as active as you'd want.
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt, but again, an older dog, and you sort of alluded to it there are only certain familial circumstances and households that you will be able to take those dogs into.
Yes, certainly. But the good shelters, and say, for example, I keep mentioning the Dogs Trust because it is recognisable as a nationwide brand with
that's true.
certain standards and protocols.
Yeah.
They will have already tested and tried to identify what the dog likes and dislikes, and whether the dog can be in a home with cats or other dogs or kids.
Small children, that's right, yeah.
So in that respect, they would have done the hard work for you. Second thing to consider, so, obviously with the older dog, the dog's going to live less years, which means the entire cost over the lifetime is going to be less.
But the upside of that is you're giving a dog, hopefully, what will be a beautifully comfortable and lovely home for the remainder of its lifetime, which is surely a benefit in itself.
It's a benefit, and it's a wonderful thing. You think if you're getting a dog that is older or, say, halfway through its lifetime, that might be, if it's a smaller dog like a Jack Russell, that could be another £4,000 saved. The other good thing when you do take a dog from a shelter, because they have their own vets and their own medical testing, the number of times I've heard stories where people have gone to buy puppies from breeders, 12 months down the line they discover that there is a medical problem. Very often luxating patellas, or it could be something else going on that they weren't aware of, they didn't budget for. Realistically, this is something that needs to be checked. If you do all of those things, one, you're still going to get a dog, you're still going to be able to share your life with one of the most wonderful creatures that walk this earth. Two, you're going to be able to do it on a discount. And three, most important of all, you are given a second chance. It's the most magnificent thing you can do.
And also, if I can just make this final point, when you're taking a dog from an animal shelter, or as you mentioned, somewhere like the Dogs Trust, that dog will be microchipped.
Yes.
That dog will also be neutered or spayed if it's a female. So,
and vaccinated as well.
And vaccinated as well. Of course, I forgot about that. So those are other sort of additional cost-saving measures to take into account as well.
Yes. If you're scared by these price tags, pay a visit to your local dog shelter. See if you can make a miracle happen this year.
You join us deep in the heart of Paw HQ, and we're ready to get to grips with the latest doggy science. And this time, Scott, I believe we're focusing on why a dog's sense of smell is so crucially important.
As we've discussed on previous episodes, we know that dogs live their lives through their noses. We know that when they're born, their eyes are closed, their ears are closed, and they're living just through their noses. There is some evidence to say that dogs are able to smell a scent that's been left behind up to 6 weeks previously. It is the most important organ for a dog.
But this has surely all been covered in previous studies. There can't be anything new to this, can there?
You'd be really surprised to learn that most studies have focused on visual or auditory stimuli and not olfaction.
Really?
There's previous research done that have checked if dogs recognise their humans by sound, by facial expressions. There has been some olfaction research, the main parts being proving that dogs are able to distinguish their own urine from another dog's urine.
Okay.
They've also managed to prove that dogs can track direction of movement through smell. Interestingly,
okay,
and this is where things get really weird.
Right.
They've also proved that African elephants can distinguish humans by scent. When you think that the level of research done into scent is almost equal in elephants as it is to dogs, it says we've got a lot of work to do here.
Talk to the Elephant, the tangential podcast, coming soon.
Absolutely.
This particular study, why has it excited you?
It is written by one of the goddesses of dog literature, Alexandra Horowitz. She wrote a book called Inside of a Dog that I randomly bought some years ago when I was on holiday in New York. I very nearly didn't leave my hotel room for the week I was there.
Well, gee, you were exciting company, huh?
Oh, I know. But no, she is a phenomenal dog writer, and her understanding of dogs is quite incredible.
Okay.
So I highly recommend anyone read it. Inside of a Dog.
So that was reason number one.
Okay, reason number two. So this study is called Discrimination of Person Odour by Undomestic Dogs, and it was in the International Journal of Comparative Psychology. The exciting part of this is that they've tried to demonstrate that dogs are able to distinguish their owner's scent from a stranger's scent. They did this using 38 dogs, and they gave the owner of each dog a T-shirt to wear for 2 nights. So they literally wore it in their sleep, took it off, put it in a bag, wore it for another night, took it off, secured it in a bag to prevent the scent from escaping.
Okay.
Now, when they selected the dogs, they gave all owners a questionnaire because they wanted to ensure that they were only using dogs that were never discouraged from sniffing.
discouraged from sniffing.
I don't know if you've ever been walking down the street, you see a friend, you stop to talk, and then your dog starts putting their nose in an area no one with polite manners should put their nose.
Well, that's just being a dog, hey?
We do this if we're running late when we're walking a dog.
Yeah.
And we might be trying to encourage our dog or hurry our dog up.
Yeah, I know, and we've discussed this before in the importance of exercising your dog. It's a social and emotional thing for a dog, as well as just physical, yeah.
Absolutely, and I don't know if many of you realise that you can actually train your dog not to use their nose. Obviously, if you're trying to do a study on this subject, you cannot have dogs that have been taught, no, don't use your nose, just keep walking.
Obviously, you need subjects who are willing and capable of performing the functions needed by the study.
Yeah, I suppose that the simple way is you need dogs who are capable of being dogs.
Of course, yes.
The dogs were tested. I'm not going to get into great detail about the room. The important parts to know is that the dogs presented with a box containing their own T-shirt.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
They were shown up to 3 times, and the time they spent sniffing the T-shirt was measured.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
The next stage, they were presented with another T-shirt with an unfamiliar odour in a box.
Okay.
And again, the time was measured.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is where we need to get our nerd on.
Strap yourselves in, everybody.
I know, this could get messy.
Okay.
So they were looking for something called habituation.
Habituation. Perhaps time for an explanation.
Habituation is a decrease in the response to stimuli after repeated presentations. So to simplify it, when the dogs were sniffing the familiar odour, they should have sniffed it for a shorter time, especially after being shown the same T-shirt again and again and again.
All right, so moving on from habituation, what else did the scientists find?
From the 38 dogs that they tested, 4 dogs had to be ruled out due to recording issues. 3 of the dogs didn't approach any of the boxes. 4 dogs did not habituate. In regards to what we were talking about, essentially 4 of them did not spend a shorter time sniffing the familiar box to the unfamiliar.
Mm-hmm.
1 dog showed no difference, and 26 of the dogs did as expected.
Okay.
They spent a significantly longer time smelling the unfamiliar scent.
All right. So, fair to say the majority of the dogs, so that's 26 out of the 38, performed as would have been expected. 4 little ones who didn't habituate. Any reason given for that?
No, not within the study. It could be for a number of things. Essentially, the dogs are in an unfamiliar room. There's also an unfamiliar person there. It's a very strange environment. They might be timid. They might be anxious. They may well have been dogs that had been trained not to scent.
Yes, yeah. Okay.
Essentially, we don't know. What we do know from the dogs that were selected, none of the dogs were trained to do scent work.
Okay.
So, ideally, all the dogs should be scenting naturally. And the other thing we don't know is, although they were wearing these T-shirts when they were sleeping, we don't know what other smells the T-shirts might have picked up from the house. They were told not to use deodorants, aftershave, generally soaps, not to put any unfamiliar smell there.
Be as natural as body odour as possible.
Yeah.
Okay.
And at the same time, the owner was actually sitting in the room. So there may have been scents emanating from the owner.
What do these results actually tell us? What do they mean?
First and foremost, it shows that, obviously, this is an example of dogs collecting information from their noses. Mm-hmm. On all accounts, it looks as if the dogs can distinguish the scent of a familiar person to the scent of an unfamiliar person. Mm-hmm. Realistically, we don't know whether they associate the smell of their owner's T-shirt with the owner or not. We can't really, short of going over to them and saying, hey, excuse me, hello, could you just answer this questionnaire for me? Generally it's not going to work because dogs can't tell us. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, our great researchers are going to get more sneaky and smarter and they're going to come up with a way to test that. It's a wonderful example of dogs using their nose. We know from this study that with an unfamiliar scent, the dog is going to scent for longer. With a familiar scent, it will sniff for shorter. You're out for a walk with your dog and your dog is suddenly sniffing and sniffing and sniffing at one piece of grass. We know that that's not a dog he knows from the neighbourhood. However...
Stranger danger.
Absolutely. And, you walk up to a lamppost, your dog does 5 seconds of quick sniffs and, leaves a message, sends a WhatsApp back.
Of course.
And he might be sending something to Bob the Border Collie at number 42.
Of course he is.
This piece of information is something we can use when we're out walking our dogs to try and interpret their own behaviour. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's fantastically useful. Mm-hmm. Now, dogs use their noses. They live through their noses. Essentially, they see everything in smell-o-vision. We know they interpret friends and enemies by their smell. They communicate with each other in their neighbourhoods, as I mentioned before, with urine markings.
That's true. Health status as well, yes.
Yeah, technically, like a dog smelling another dog's urine is like reading someone's Facebook update.
Okay.
Without the annoying self-depreciating pictures asking for love and attention.
On my holiday in Florida.
Well, I don't know if dogs do that. You have to watch the way they spell it. Now, we know they quite possibly measure distance. They measure speed. They're collecting so much information from scent that we don't know about.
Yeah.
So this is just a very early step along the road to better understanding dogs' noses. But to finish, right, when you take your dog for a walk, your dog's sniffing for a dog is mentally stimulating. It's physically stimulating. It decreases their heart rate. It decreases their stress levels. So honestly, one of the kindest things we can do for our dogs is just to let them sniff.
We want this Dogcast to be as interactive an experience as possible, so please get in touch. You can talk to the paw on Facebook, www.facebook.com/talktothepaw pod, Twitter @talktothepawpod, find us on Instagram @talktothepawpod, email info@talktothepaw.co.uk. All the podcasts are available to listen and download on Apple Podcast, Spotify and Google Podcasts.
Gadgets, gizmos, gastronomy.
We've all been there. You dash out of the house for that first dog walk of the day and you're fresh out of poo bags, or your dog needs a drink and you haven't brought a bowl. What to do? But fear not, because there are leash and collar systems on the market that promise to help you with all those niggly problems and much, much more. I'm quite excited by this as someone who frequently dashes out of the house without most of what she needs, but my little canine nerd friend, you're not quite as enthused.
No. Do you remember the original Batman movie from the 1960s?
Kapow! Yes, in other words. Although, for the sake of accuracy, I was not born in the 60s. Thank you.
It opens with this scene where Batman's on a ladder from a helicopter and this shark jumps up. Big rubber shark thing.
Of course it does.
Bites his leg.
Right.
And out of his utility belt, he pulls a can of shark repellent.
Of course he does. A big can of whoop-ass.
And he sprays the shark, and obviously the shark falls into the sea. I often see these all singing, all dancing, all inclusive leash systems, as you'd like to call them, promising the world and delivering very little. Many of them offer some ideas that are genuinely good and a positive step in the right direction, but often it's the execution that lets them down. And quite recently I saw one that contains a water bowl, a light, a built-in poop bag holder, a seatbelt, a shock collar.
Of course it does.
And wait for it, best of all, it's retractable.
What's retractable?
The leash.
The leash is retractable. So what's the issue with a retractable leash?
Well, originally they were designed to help you teach a puppy to recall, to come. The little puppy couldn't escape. Aside from the obvious injuries that people encounter on a weekly basis, such as burns on their hands, I've read stories in the newspapers about people losing the tips of their finger.
What?
Their design is self-defeating. For a dog to actually go further forward, the dog learns that he has to pull a little.
Okay.
So, it's encouraging pulling. It makes walking a dog on a leash a lost cause. I know a lot of people will say, but I want my dog to go further. I want my dog to be able to explore more.
And surely that's a good thing.
But they're very often the same people who are complaining that their dog is pulling all the time.
Right.
So I had a client. One day she'd been out, it was one night actually, she'd been out walking a dog. And they'd had the last walk before bed. She lived in an apartment, so she had to walk the dog before going to sleep. And when she come back to her apartment block, she's pressed the button for the lift, waiting for the lift to come.
Okay.
And the doors have opened and she's walked inside.
Okay. Yeah.
And as the door closed, she realised her dog hadn't gone with her.
Oh my God.
So then the lift starts moving upwards.
Oh my God.
With the dog outside on his collar.
God.
And her with the retractable leash, she said, she was hitting the buttons, trying to get the lift to stop, trying to get the doors to open. That didn't work, so she was trying to open the door with her fingers. That wouldn't work. So she even actually tried to bite through the leash with her teeth, terrified about what would happen.
Oh my God.
And when she got to the 3rd floor, the doors finally opened and she come out and she sort of ran downstairs as fast as she could. The good news is, just the end of the cord was sticking out of the elevator doors.
Okay.
There was no sign of the dog.
Okay.
The dog, after about 10 minutes searching, had managed to get out the apartment building and was outside in the car park, sitting there shaking, thinking, what on earth had happened to me?
Oh.
The potential for tragedy with these leashes is what disturbs me most about them.
Okay. I don't have an issue with the poop bags, as I said in the introduction, as someone who is frequently more ditzy than should be permissible, quite frankly, in society. I sometimes go out of the house without poo bags. My own fault, I'm not prepared. No issue with me in having a little thing for poop bags on your lead. But I had read that some of these devices have what's described as a vibration element in them. Why would that be necessary? What would that even be for?
Honestly, it's not necessary. Normally there'll be a receptor on the collar and there'll be a button on like the handle of the retractable lead.
Okay.
The idea being that, say your dog is not listening and doesn't have good recall and is running away, you press the button, so it sends a vibration to the dog's collar.
So it's like a punishment for the dog, is it?
Yes, absolutely is. Okay, granted it's not an electric shock.
Oh, yeah.
Still,
well, I think it's important to make that distinction, yes.
Imagine this, right? You're out for a lovely walk, some beautiful field, lovely summer's day. You've got the summery breeze, you can smell cut grass, you can smell barbecue. So you try to explore a little more. Then you feel someone poking you behind the shoulder blades.
Yeah.
And you look round and no one's there. Then you continue walking and you get poked again. And again. And again.
Yeah.
Now, what would that do to your mental health?
Well, I'm quite certain when you describe it in those terms that the dog is just being a dog, and surely it's going to be quite hard for the dog to understand why, when it's doing what it normally does, what it instinctively does, that it's almost being punished.
Absolutely. And you have to remember, to be able to take your dog out for a walk, you need to be able to handle the collar. And if anything, the vibration function is going to teach the dog to be afraid.
Yeah.
Because this is the thing that keeps shaking at random, and I don't understand why. Personally, I much prefer to train dogs than terrorise them. One
important question that I think needs to be asked, and something that struck me when I was reading about these gadgets, these gizmos. Are they designed for the dogs, or are they designed for humans? Are they designed to make humans' lives easier? That's what I take from it. Maybe that's unfair.
No, you're absolutely right. They are devices of convenience.
Yeah.
It's
me and my poop bags.
You and your poop bags. Yeah. It's great having poop bags in your lead, but still, there's only going to be a limited supply. Now, I once got a life hack from the most unlikely of suspects on this topic.
Christopher Biggins.
No.
Okay.
My mother.
Okay.
Now, my mother, she doesn't buy poop bags. She buys disposable nappy bags.
Oh, I like.
One, you can buy them still for like £1, £2 for about 100 bags from a supermarket.
Enviro-friendly, Scott's mum.
Yes, biodegradable. And thirdly, it makes the poo smell like vanilla. Who doesn't like vanilla poo?
Well,
there are some aspects, right? Obviously, you do need poo bags.
There's a lesson for me.
I've seen some of them that have built-in water bowls.
Again, what's the problem with that?
Nothing. I think it's a great idea. I suppose point one is how much water can you fit inside like a retractable handle.
Isn't some water better than no water, though?
Yes, but what happens, for instance, when you forget to empty it or refresh it? That doesn't appeal to me that much. I've seen others with lights for the collar and lights actually in the handle. So you have a little button to push and it turns on the light on the dog's, like on the handle of the leash, and the light on the dog's collar. Now, this is something that I have first-hand experience with. I'm colourblind. I have a Scottish Terrier. Some nights I'd walk him off the leash.
Yeah.
And I couldn't see him.
Yes, because he's dark-coloured, isn't he?
Yes, he's a brindle Scotty.
Yeah.
Now, as soon as he was running around in the dark and I'd put this light around his collar, he would be almost blind in the distance.
And why was that?
I suspect that it was affecting his colour perception. To summarise, a good long leash gives your dog the space for it to walk more naturally with you. It's not natural for a wild animal to be harnessed beside you, and we expect it of our dogs every day. If you do want to see an improvement, no all singing, all dancing, Batman utility belt dog leash is going to make the difference for you. The only thing that is going to improve your dog's behaviour is you. You have to put in the effort, the hours, and train with your dog. There are no shortcuts to a happy walk.
Wagtastic Woofs is where we at Paw HQ pay tribute to a particularly special dog who's done something truly remarkable. Our episode 5 superhero story is quite a poignant one though, as we celebrate the life of Kirby, a 12-year-old English Springer Spaniel. This plucky pooch had a distinguished 8-year career as a search and rescue dog with the fire service in Essex, England, and had worked in a variety of dangerous and challenging scenarios. His job saw him airlifted in helicopters, abseil down buildings, and retrieve people from situations ranging from gas explosions to a collapsing power station. When he wasn't hard at work, he also managed to indulge in a spot of fundraising for good measure. Kirby retired from duty last year, having been diagnosed with cancer, and he sadly lost his battle against the disease just a few days ago. To Kirby, who touched the lives of so many and proof that not all heroes wear capes, we thank you for your service. And instead of our usual wagtastic round of applause, here's a stirring bagpipe tribute to Kirby for being a very good boy indeed. Remember, you can nominate your own Wagtastic Woof. Get in touch and tell us about that very special dog who's made a difference to your life. Contact us on Facebook or Twitter at Talk2ThePaw pod. Email info@talktothepaw.co.uk. Instagram @Talk2ThePaw pod. Your stories and comments, questions and suggestions are all welcome. That's all for now. Thank you for your company. Until next time, goodbye.